This episode has been brought to you by CompleteNutra.com, Whole Family Nutrition. Welcome to the Healthy and Family Show. Each episode features interviews with doctors, experts, and real moms revealing their secrets on how to keep you and your whole family holistically healthy. Your host is David A. Stone, award-winning movie producer, Amazon best-selling author, certified moringa grower, and founder of CompleteNutra.com, Whole Family Nutrition, which is committed to providing the highest quality, science-backed, non-GMO, all-natural nutritional supplements to keep your whole family healthy. Here's David.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is David A. Stone, and thank you so much for tuning in to another exciting episode of the Healthy and Family Show. This is episode 5, and today we're interviewing Dr. Jessie Keener again, and we're talking about breath work / brain training. It's a very exciting episode because really we've been born with superpowers. We were born with superpowers. We were also born into trauma, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, how to release past trauma and a breath that actually lines up with each one of the brain waves. So when we do a complete breath, we're activating a super healing molecule within our bodies. So there's a lot of people that are talking about breathing. Yoga is about breathing and movement. So breath is a very important piece of our life. I mean, obviously it's one of the big foundations, but what we're doing is we're breathing very shallow. So Dr. Jessie teaches us today how to breathe deeper and a specific breath that we can do that is called the G breath, and it's the gamma breath, and it allows our brain to get into the gamma state, which is a really cool state to be in. So we all do the breath on camera, so you can do the breath with us during this episode. Jessie will walk us through the G breath, so you can start practicing it every single day, because the more we practice this breath, the more oxygen we're going to get into our body, and the more training we can get our brain, because this is actually called brain training, not just breathing exercises. Now we're talking about breathing and brain training in today's episode with Dr. Jessie Keener. And one of the things I want to mention to you is at CompleteNutra.com, we have the Complete Brain and Focus Formula. Now, the exciting thing about this formula is that can be taken by everybody in the whole family. Now, you can take one in the morning, one in the evening if you like, so that's 2 a day. And if you don't feel like that's working, you can actually take 2 in the morning and 2 at night, so you can kind of double it up. This is just a whole bunch of powerful ingredients for our brain. This is an excellent compatibility with our complete turmeric. So if you're going to get complete turmeric and lower your inflammation and increase your antioxidants, you can also add some brain nutrition as well. One of the things that the Complete Brain and Focus formula has in it, it's a flower called Bacopa. Now this is one of many ingredients. I think we have over 46 ingredients in this that are all excellent to nutrify your brain. But one really special ingredient, like I said, is called Bacopa, and it is a flower. It's a brain flower. In fact, Bacopa has a lot of studies on PubMed.com, so check it out. But I love all natural ingredients, especially ones that are nootropics, ones that are flowers that help our brain function better. If you want to support our guest today and also support your health at the same time, go to CompleteNutra.com and fill up your cart with all the cool ingredients. Try some of our brain formula out, and then at checkout, enter the code DrKeener20 and you get 20% off your entire order. So that's going to help your health, and it's also going to support our guest on today's show. So thank you so much for watching the Healthy and Family Show. Now, let me introduce to you Dr. Jessie Keener. All right, we're here again with Dr. Jessie Keener, and I'm really excited because today's episode is actually going to be about brain training and breathing, conscious breathing. And there's something very special and a little bit different about it when you actually consider it brain training. And so first off, I kind of want to start, because you're an expert on brain training. You've been doing it for many, many years, and I can't wait to get into the discussion. But first, I really want to start off with, why do we need conscious breathing, and what is brain training.
Yeah, that sounds great, Dave, because this is one of my biggest passions in life is the whole thing with breathing and why conscious breathing. And certainly before I really had my health crisis and my transformation, I would have said, well, I breathe all day long. What's the big deal, right?
Right.
But the reality is there is a big deal. And what's interesting and what I've learned by being involved in it for now almost 35 years is that you can literally change your perception by changing how you're breathing. Now, we know from the ancient yogic practices that there's a huge emphasis on breathing and breath work and training the breath and controlling the breath. And of course, yoga did not originate in the United States of America. So, the American culture is more of the modern culture. And when the yogic aspect of breath work was actually brought over to the U.S., it was in the 60s, and it was through a movement called rebirthing. And rebirthing was basically doing a form of breathing, which was all in and out of the mouth. So obviously anyone that has a mouth can do this. But the trick was the inhale was always connected to the exhale, and you never were not in one or the other. So it was like your breath was this eternal circle. And the more you breathe and the more you continued to breathe, the more you could process or go through different ways and states of being and different even personality things like, why am I doing this? I wonder why I'm doing this. I could be at home eating right now. Why am I doing this breathing session? But eventually, as your body gets more and more oxygen and as you get your brain waves into deeper states, you actually start to have great breakthroughs with it. So that was the rebirthing movement. I was not an adult at the time that was coming out, but apparently they were doing a lot of work with hot tubs, psychedelics, etc. So There was an aspect of this early breath work being very related to your consciousness and how you could actually shift your perception, hence shift your consciousness. So, for instance, you could use it for trauma. You could use it for intense dislikes, even phobias. You could use it to learn how to be still. You could use it how to sort of transcend the mind. All of this was very interesting to me, and that was a long time ago. So I started doing breath work. I started doing it as a client first, then I started doing it as a practitioner. The practice of coaching others in breath work is very, very fascinating because there's always going to be an element of not knowing. When the client's in the session, the practitioner doesn't know what's going to happen next, and the client doesn't know what happened next. And the only agreement is we're just going to keep breathing. So what we found was that through diligent work, and I want to stress the word diligent, and long sessions where you would do this circular mouth-mouth breathing, changes would happen, changes for the better. So people would have breakthroughs. They could come out of their shells more. They could be empowered more. They could maybe do action steps in their life that maybe before these sessions they would just be too timid or just wouldn't have the self-esteem or the self-value. So this was great, and I loved it. And a lot of what I did was help other people really understand that when you open up your breathing, very realistically, you're opening up to life. So I'm just going to kind of stop right there and say, when you open up to your breathing, you're really opening up to life, because our first experience of being alive outside of the body, generally our first profound experience is it's the experience of the first breath.
Oh, wow, yeah.
In a natural birth setting, the first breath happens when the baby is ready to breathe, typically because the cooler air is touching the surface of the skin, and maybe there's like wiping of the face with a soft cloth, and as that stimulation starts to happen, eventually the baby's going to take a first breath. Mind you, the infant is still connected through the umbilical cord to the placenta, so all its oxygen needs are still being met. In a natural birth, we don't hurry up and cut the cord. We actually let things kind of organize a little bit, get a little cleaning up going on, let the baby go ahead and start to respond, look and see, does it respond naturally? Well, in a hospital birth, which most of us, that's how we were brought in, it's not like that. Birth is like a timed event in a hospital setting. It's actually considered a sort of a medical emergency. And so there's no time to just wait and wipe gently. And, it's very much like quick, let's clear everything out of the way and get that baby up there and whack it on the butt and let's get that breath going. Okay, well, that's great, except what is that first breath going to be like for that infant? That breath is not a getting to know you life breath. That breath is an emergency breath. So what happens is the infant actually over breathes. Now they're in a state of shock as that pain, hits their body and their reflexes snap, and they take in a huge amount of air. Now remember, they were sitting in a 98.6 more or less bath, came into this room temperature situation. Now they're upside down, they're getting whacked. When that air comes in, it actually burns the lining of the lungs. There's actually a painful experience. And then the mind says, because there's already a mind developing right there, says, okay, I'm never going to do that again. I am never going to take that deep of a breath again.
What? Wow. Oh my gosh. Trauma from the very first instant.
And in the conscious breathing movement, we actually call that birth trauma. So well said, Dave Stone. Well said.
Wow.
And that, of course, goes deep into the unconscious. And in our culture, I'm going to speak very clearly about the Western culture. When you see babies sleeping, you notice that their little bellies are literally moving up and down if they're on their backs, the belly, and you can see that they're diaphragmatic breathing. After about the age of 6, 7, and 8, in our culture, that's no longer happening. And if you watch kids in elementary school and they're getting up on the stage to do a little sing-song performance for,
right,
mom and dad and Halloween performance, whatever it is, right? And all the kids take their deep breaths to start their songs and they go,
yeah.
And it's all pulled up in here, and there's no belly happening whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So people have had massive transformations over and over and over for eons, apparently, using the breath.
Wow.
How we breathe is how we live. If we breathe fully, we get to live fully with all the benefits of what that means. If we're stingy with our breath, if we never recovered from that birth trauma, literally, we're going to be stingy with our breath for sure.
And that's just the first trauma, it's basically things from that point are. So that's the interesting thing. I really didn't think about it this way because as an infant, our subconscious is not developed until we're pretty much 4 to 7 years old, depending on people. But once our subconscious is developed because of every single thing that happens in our environment, that's where we actually are programmed into bad patterns. And there's some stats that say that I think it's 75% or 80% of the adult habits we have were programmed prior to 7 years old. So, and
exactly.
A lot of them happened. I didn't even think about something happening the moment we're out, our subconscious, that's the very first input that our subconscious gets. I really never even thought about it like that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And we do need to
reprogram
this stuff. So this is I see what you're saying. Without breathing consciously, we don't actually get a chance to address the trauma. In fact, it probably will just stay either compartmentalized, hidden, or just ignored, maybe.
Yeah, but it will have consequence. So when ignored, that doesn't mean it's neutral in the body. All emotional traumas store as emotional charges in the body. And that's probably as good a time as any to segue into the next level of my experience with breathwork. So that was called the rebirthing movement.
Wow.
Right? And not for nothing, what we just talked about, what you just said about, this imprinting of the birth trauma and the purpose of these earlier breathing cycles, the actual purpose was eventually, and perhaps hopefully, you would get to the point where you would recall your birth trauma while in your breath work process and be able to actually heal that trauma, to be able to forgive mom, the doc that caught you and held you upside down, squeezing those little tiny ankles together and whacked you, because we did make all kinds of decisions at that point, many basic decisions such as life is not safe, people will hurt me, it's dangerous to be here, and on and on and on.
So can you remember that? Does brain training actually help? Because most people don't. I don't necessarily have memories prior to 4 or 5 necessarily.
Well, here's what's interesting. So this is perfect that you asked that question that way, because no, not everyone does get to recollect their birth trauma per se the way we're talking about it. However, so what we've been talking about is straight breath work. Now we're going to talk about integrating breath work with brain training.
Okay.
So when we start to brain train over time, yes, we then start having access to more memories from our childhood and our past. And it's shocking, but that was actually part of my experience. I used to have something called post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. And one of the so-called negative features of PTSD is because of the recurring shocks and trauma, we actually have deletions in our memory. We have like huge chunks of stuff that we just can't remember.
I have that.
And it's from childhood. It's all, and so one of the things that used to happen to me is we'd be at my Keener family reunion, and I have 2 brothers and a sister, and they'd start telling a story, and I would listen with fascination, and then they'd say something, and I'd say, God, that's so funny. I wish I was there. And they were like, no, you were there.
Oh, yeah, right?
So I knew that wasn't healthy. I've been around in healing for so long that even 15 years ago, I had very few positive childhood memories. I could pull up the traumatic ones better and better with all this breath work and rebirthing I've been doing. But then what happened is maybe a little over a decade ago, I bumped into someone actually on a webinar. He was doing a YouTube named Corey Herter. And Corey and I had done a lot of advanced training in breath work with different teachers. And some of these are like published and really well-known icons in the breath work industry. This gentleman was a complete unknown out of Boulder, Colorado. And he had a little whiteboard in the back, and he was showing us how different orifice of breathing, so breathing through the mouth or breathing through the nose, he actually was correlating them to brain wavelengths. And because I'd already been immersed for about, 25 years in conscious breath work, I just was glued to it. I was riveted. And I had never seen anyone make this correlation. And I've since done a lot of research, and nobody else has this correlation. Wow. Turns out that Corey Herter had suffered brain injury and brain damage when he was 14. When I saw the video, he was in his late 20s, early 30s. And part of the brain damage, after they sent him home and said he was well and he was stable, was that periodically he would have seizures. He would actually seize up, and he would leave his body. And he would actually enter a dream-like state. He would enter this state, and he would have all these really cool beings around, and they were doing cool stuff and showing off their infinite strengths and flexibilities. So he had super beings in this dream-like state. Now, this happened over 300 times over a period of about 2.5 years, where every few days, and the doctors had nothing for this. Every few days he would have a seizure, Dave. And then when he would come back into his actual little body, that little adolescent body, he would have zero memory of anything that had happened in his life up until when he left. So he was wiped. His mind was a clear slate.
Wow.
Did not even, the door, knock on the door. He'd wake up in the morning, knock on the door. Mom would stick her head and say, Corey, are you going to school? And he would look at her like, I actually don't know who this is. I know I probably should know who this. It was really a problem, a big problem. The good news is gradually, as he kept going to this dreamlike place, it was almost like being in a video game, he would describe it, but the same beings would show up, and he would kind of get to know them and know their routines, and they were doing athletic whatever they were doing. And finally he got their attention. He said, you have to help me, because when I go back there, I am like a paraplegic mentally. I don't have my memories. I get wiped out every 4 or 5 days, maybe every 3 days. All my memories go away again. Wow. And I need help. And so finally they agreed to help him. And it's a very long story, and the help that he got included this very basic breath work that I'm going to be talking about next, where whether you breathe in through the mouth or breathe in through your nose actually correlates to a human brain wavelength. Now, before I get into those juicy details, because they're very juicy, I wanted to tell you that Corey went on and used what they gave him, and as they gave him the technology and he worked with it more and more, he was able to not fully recover from the brain damage, but he was able to start recovering more and more. And he was able to start using other parts of his brain, which we have a lot of hard science around now, to be more functional in life. So he was able to create himself as a more normal person, even though he really wasn't normal and probably never will be normal. But the interesting thing is, in modern history today, when you read about human brainwaves, most of what's there is a tiny aspect and even partly incorrect, which I find fascinating. It's like a whole nother level of who knew that there's so much more to brain waves than what we've been told. Yeah. And that when people really get the juice and get to find out what's really going on here, they're probably going to get really excited, as I did. So what we learned is that you can be in very different states depending on how you're breathing. So in modern psychology and brain studies, they say things like you'll get to a deep delta state when you're sound asleep, and that's when you access the deepest part of your sleep, and that's a delta brainwave.
Okay.
And that's great. But what they left out was at a high delta wave, you're wide awake, you're perhaps doing ecstatic dancing. You might be making love incredibly with your partner and you're deeply connected. You could be in a tribal dance or at a drum circle. And you can get in a very high delta state where it's just total creativity and flow.
Wow.
Where was that in high school and college, right? So then so when Corey started teaching about this, I realized, oh, this is going to up my game because I already had the 25 years under my belt with doing conscious breath work and helping people move through layers and layers of BS. So I thought this is going to be great. So I just jumped in with everything I had and started practicing this one breath that he gave us, which we're going to introduce you to today, called the G breath. And what Corey taught was when you breathe in the mouth and out the mouth, that actually creates a beta wave in the brain. And the way I remember this is beta rules our body. It rules our physicality. It rules our physiology, our chemical stuff, our structural, our bones, our muscles. That's all beta wave stuff. So if I'm going to be in an athletic endeavor, Dave, guess how I'm going to breathe? I'm going to breathe in and out of my mouth. You better believe it. And I'm not going to breathe in through the nose unless I just have to, swallow and clear my throat a couple of times. And when I was a long distance runner, I remember being told, breathe through your mouth, breathe through your mouth. So emotional body is regulated by an alpha wave. And I remember alpha because of, ow, I'm feeling emotional. It could be a high emotional. It could be a low emotional. It could be a joy. It could be a suppression. But alpha is in the mouth and out the nose. So if I'm actually feeling over emotional, I can just breathe a couple of alpha waves in the mouth and out the nose, and that's going to start to regulate that excess emotionality so I can feel more stable. It doesn't suppress the emotion. It actually just stabilizes that wave so that we can process it better. When we're in an information-seeking state of mind, say I'm like on the internet reading a research paper on some breakthrough with nitric oxide regulation, I'll probably breathe through my nose because in and out of the nose is a theta wave, and theta is the information-gathering wave. So a lot of when we're at work and we're processing through or we're running a meeting with employees or whatever we might be doing sort of work related, if it involves your mind and concentration, you're probably going to be in a theta state. And most people do breathe nose when they're really focusing on stuff, if you've ever noticed.
Yeah.
And then back to the delta, which is nose-mouth. So nose-mouth is going to be like the seat of creativity. If I'm a writer and I've got a deadline and I am stuck in writer's cramp or writer's block, I'm going to do some delta waves. I'm going to breathe in my nose and out the mouth so I can start to stabilize that wave of very high-end creativity, which, of course, they forgot to put in the textbooks about delta.
Yeah, right.
We don't want any enlightenment here. So that was the first stage of what I saw about Corey's work, just very simply said, and we're going to put this all together in a moment. But the second stage was realizing that the nature of doing his G breath, moving from the mouth to the mouth-nose to the nose-nose to the nose-mouth, was literally cycling our brain from beta to alpha to theta to delta.
Oh, wow.
And that when you did that, there was a juicy reward delivered from the center of the brain called the pineal gland. And the juicy reward is a chemical compound called DMT or dimethyltryptamine. Now, for those of you that are new to DMT, you can probably Google the spirit molecule. That's right, the spirit molecule, because that's what science has dubbed DMT. Now, Jesse says if science dubs something the spirit molecule, we probably should be paying attention. And it turns out that these high energy states that come from these types of breathing exercises or even other things, but certainly breathing exercises, cause the pineal gland to release its own DMT, which causes a shift in consciousness, causes a change in perception. Literally inside the brain now, as that DMT starts to circulate, we're having a GABA redistribution throughout the body. So we're going to feel relaxed, refreshed, alert, connected, and in the flow. So what's not to love about that, right?
Wow. Now, you referred to this as technology, and I think that might be interesting to explain because, when I think of tech, I don't think of breathing. I think of electronics.
Right. So think of the computer brain as your hardware and think of the breathing cycles as your software.
Okay, got it. So more like a computer kind of technology. Yeah, software.
So I'll give you a great example.
Okay.
I remember when computers first came out. I was in Austin, Texas, right, home of Dell Computers, and a friend of mine, Glenn, actually called me up and said, "You need to stop by my office. I've got a computer set up, and you've got to see what it does." And I'm like, "Cool." And at that time, I was in a huge facility that I'd co-created that was like a holistic health place, lots of docs, lots of different people, and I was thinking computerizing could be cool. This was like 1980 something, right?
Wow.
Go to Glenn's, and he's got this little thing called a mouse, and he starts doing on his keyboard C:\C:. He starts like doing all this typing, and I'm like, okay, well, what's all this? And he goes, well, this is so I can get into the word processor. And I'm like, that is so much work to just be able to type a document. But that is how DOS worked. You had to do the C:\, no, right? And then when Windows came out, it was what? Click and go. Click, and your Word document opens. Click, and you're on the internet. This is like the Windows for the brain. Everyone's running on DOS, but this is like the Windows because now you can take charge of your reality. Not only can you create your reality, but you can take the reality that's happening and recreate it instantly if you get good with these breathing exercises. So I wanted the promise of what this particular breathing technology can give us. I wanted to access more and more of my brain, and I wanted to become more intelligent. I remember very clearly being in college and being told by a professor that there were no courses at this really great Ivy League school I was attending, but there were no courses that taught people how to use more of the brain, that we didn't have that yet. And I thought, well, it's insane that you can only use, 10 to 13% of a brain. That a horse doesn't use 10 to 13% of its hoarseness, so what's that about? So it just didn't make any sense. So when I saw what Corey was doing, and we talked about, you can train your brain. You can train your brain to go back into traumas and actually through the breathing cycles, dismantle the negative charges in the trauma and actually create, make them neutralize as the brain is excreting that DMT. So it's probably the best natural healing technique I've ever seen that can be done by oneself for oneself.
For free.
It doesn't cost a penny.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the better it gets. So that was the interesting thing that I saw was initially when I did the breath, I could tell I was having a minor DMT response. And what that would mean is I would get a little lightheaded at the end of the breathing cycle. So Dave, we're gonna do this breathing cycle, and we're gonna see if you get a little lightheaded.
So real quick, I just want to because our perception is reality, breathing opens our awareness and allows us to technically create our reality. I mean, we always create our reality by our perception, but this allows us to more like design the reality
you can be the
that
architect.
We desire.
Yeah, you can be more of the architect. You're the master.
And it's breath. It's the air around us. I mean, it's fascinating that now, even if we're like locked in a little coffin and we're still alive, like there's still oxygen there. There's oxygen everywhere. There's breath. And I know this is even more than just the oxygen, but the fact is too, we are giving and you know what is created by oxygen? ATP in the center of our cells, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So it's like the more we breathe, not only are we training our brain, we're actually giving our body more building blocks just from the oxygen to create energy within our cells, cellular energy.
Absolutely. And people really get that. I mean, when we used to do the 1.5 hour long breathing sessions, people would feel so fabulous at the end. They'd be like, I'm king of the world. I can go out there and do anything now. And be like, yes. Yeah. And then we're going to wait a few minutes before you get in the car and start driving.
Okay. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to do.
So we're going to do the breath. Yep. Okay. We're going to do the breath. It's called the G breath. G stands for gamma, and gamma is actually the brain state that we enter at the end of the exercise. So another way of describing gamma would be the state of sort of connected consciousness that happens when we have a DMT experience. This would be the experience that all of the great spiritual mystics would talk about. This is part of the training for the Tibetan monks. So this is not new. This is really old. The difference is nobody's been able to do it in 9 breaths. Yeah. So we're going to do 9 breaths.
Okay.
And we're going to see if you get a little lightheaded. Yep. And you can do 13 breaths and you can do 5 breaths, but we're just going to do 9 because we're on video.
CompleteNutra.com, whole family nutrition.
Hello, Jessica Keener here, and today we're going to talk about one of my favorite formulas, Complete Brain. Now, we've talked about stress, we've talked about the importance of getting good sleep. The brain formula really kind of completes that picture because we're all pushing ourselves really hard, and honestly, as we get older, 20s into 30s, 30s into 40s and beyond, we definitely start to realize that our mental cognitive function isn't quite right. And in fact, one of my favorite clinical nutritionists used to say, the first place a nutritional imbalance is going to show up in the body is going to be in the mental cognitive functions of the brain. So let's be honest, are we all eating just right? No. What did I just say? The first place that's going to show up is in the mental and cognitive processes of the brain. So we need help. This is a very sophisticated formula with a ton of proven ingredients that get in there and really perk up everything from clarity to helping promote relaxation, because have you noticed you focus better when you're a little bit more relaxed? Things to help the brain process, things to help circulation, so we get the blood to the brain. And this is a product that you can take once a day, twice a day. You can take 1 capsule at a time. I would say start with 1, but if you don't feel like it's really giving you the result you want, go to 2. Twice a day is probably great for people like college students, busy executives. If you're leading a team at a project and you're going all day long and talking, you're going to probably want to take it twice a day. Again, I think it would couple best with our stress support formula and our sleep support formula at the end of the day. But definitely get on your brain formula, Complete Brain, for complete mental clarity.
CompleteNutra.com, whole family nutrition.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and do the G breath now. G stands for gamma because that's actually the brain state that we're going to produce, which most of us are going to feel a slight lightheadedness, a little bit of a dizziness at the end of the exercise. This is just going to be 9 breaths that we're doing. And we're going to be doing medium breaths, nothing strenuous, about a 3-second inhale and a 3-second exhale. You want to make sure your jaw is nice and relaxed, don't clench, and also make sure that you're breathing, with the belly. So we're going to keep our eyes open and just soften your focus so you're not like really gripping with your eyes or anything. Okay. And then we're going to breathe in the mouth all the way, 3 seconds in. And now out the mouth. And in the mouth. And out the mouth. In the nose. Out the nose. And in the nose. Out the nose. And in the mouth. Out the mouth. In the mouth. Out the mouth. In the nose. Out the nose. In the nose. Out the nose. In the mouth. Out the mouth. In the mouth. Hold for 3, 2, 1. Gentle half breath out the mouth. Now relax, breathe through your nose or your mouth, and just close your eyes for a moment. You'll probably notice there's a little extra energy in your head.
Yeah, I'm vibrating.
This is like an early stage of brain training for everyone. So this literally is brain training. We're training the brain to cycle properly. So here's the big takeaway. Since the advent of electricity and the way that affects the human brain and the body, since the decrease in the magnetic poles of the earth, how the brain processes itself has changed drastically. It's changed drastically. Before the advent of electricity, maybe a couple hundred years ago, when we slept at night, the brain was free to do all of its defragging processes. So during nighttime sleep, the brain would go through the day, look at all those little terrible things that happen, the highs and the lows. It would start sorting and categorizing. It was part of its, data collecting and organizing, and you would defrag. But since the advent of electricity and the way that affects the brain is not effectively defragging anymore. So modern people's brains are overloaded and not defragging properly.
Wow.
We're taught in med school that you only have a DMT response when you're first born, and likely when you last leave the body and you're dying. Those are the only two times in life taught that we get a DMT response. What we learned through studying the ancient spiritual practices is that is just not true. And people who work with their pineal gland and train it through these simple breathing exercises, as an example, train it to secrete the DMT and then train it to secrete more and more. It'll start secreting more and more and more.
Wow.
And then you won't always need the breath to be in that super flow state, that super conscious state. I had to do it a lot in the beginning because I could see the difference of where I was after the breath and how just nice and flowy and just everything was so connected. And then maybe I'm driving home from work and I'm thinking about a client that's really difficult and this person cuts me off and I'm kind of tense now. And it's like, well, that is nothing like that flow state. So I would just do the breath in the car. I would do it on the way to the office. I would do it at home. I would just do the breath a lot. If something didn't go the way I wanted in a little interaction with someone, later I would pull that up and I would process it with the breath. So when we don't process our stuff enough, those charges for each emotional encounter, each little thing that went on during the day, even if we thought it was pretty neutral, it probably wasn't very neutral. And those charges store in the body, and that helps accelerate the aging process.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, it totally makes sense. And this goes way deeper than I was actually expecting it to go. I mean, really, we're talking about breathing. It's like, oh, your body needs more breath. No, it's like, this is interesting where you're taking it because it goes down to the base of existence, like the fabric of how we're knit together. Yes. And it's like people, I know a lot of people who would never even think about trying to get more DMT because there's already a perception in some people's minds about DMT being like a bad thing or something that happens when you die, and it's like, well, I think that's fascinating that. And there's so many things right now that, within the natural health space that we're learning causes calcification of our pineal gland. And,
such as fluoridated water is an example, which is tragic. Yeah.
And, like you're saying, defragging. So I'm around the computer a lot. And I actually just heard something that this generation of children that are growing up right now that were born in front of a screen are having a lot of issues right now with early partial blindness because of all these LEDs and things. So there's a lot of things that are kind of like all connected. And so anyways, I'm around the computer and I'm around electricity a lot. I'm looking at screens a lot. And I just went out for a 2-night camping trip in the middle of nowhere, and my phones didn't even work, and it was excellent, but it was so needed. It was like a complete defrag recalibration, and I'm glad I came back. I mean, it was fun to come back. I'm glad to be back, but I think that's needed. We planned our next trip already. Yeah. I think once a month we need to get out in where there's no 5G tower. I mean, geez, this gets into that too. Yeah. So the big thing is that nobody's breathing deeply enough, often enough. That's a fact. A couple little things that have happened in the last couple of years, I've noticed on social media, there's a lot more attention to something called the vagus nerve, VAGUS. The vagus nerve runs from the base of our, from the bottom of our, from the top of our spine rather, all the way down throughout and kind of incorporates around the lungs and all the digestive organs. So this is a whopping big, it's actually the biggest nerve in the body. And the reason I'm bringing this up is science has determined the most effective way to reset and start to restore that vagus nerve is through taking long, slow exhales. So science says it doesn't really matter whether it's a big breath in or a small breath in, but the longer the exhale, the more the vagus nerve just relaxes. Wow. And I think that's because the vagus nerve is very tied into the fight or flight response. So if we can take charge of our nervous system that directly, and that's just recent research, as people open up and start to really look at the science behind breath work, I mean,
people should really Google Wim Hof and look at the things he's done with his body simply by manipulating his breath and the levels of oxygen in his body.
And the thing about him is people think about him as breath work, but they also think about him as the cold exposure guy. But what he says is cold is the teacher for him in order to breathe. Because, I mean, if you try to get into a cold shower or a cold ice bath, you have to breathe through it. It's like, so that.
And I've done it. I've done it.
And
so the good news is, and people go, why would you do it? And you go, I do it for the end result. The end result is after about 10 minutes, you're just like, I'm in bliss. I'm in ecstasy. I don't need to get out. And my mates were all there. And they're like, no, you're actually getting out now.
You're like, I'm good.
Because we don't want you to melt the ice for the next guy. But no, seriously, we did that. So the body's really the teacher. And the other thing that the early breath work taught me is you can simply change your ability to manage discomfort internally by your breath. That's a huge one when you think about the times that we're in right now, because we're recording this during the COVID-19 pandemic where social distancing has become the new norm, right? And people are like really on edge, and some people are still really afraid. Other people are like, I'm not wearing a mask, I'm just immortal or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But the reality is we need ways of being more connected. That's the reality that we're in. So the vagus nerve, very, very important, simply by taking a medium breath in and maybe breathing out to an 8 count. And if you can't get out to 8, exhale out to 8, that means you need to practice this more and get up to that. People that have insomnia, people that have asthma, people that have autoimmune disorders, people that have high stress levels, they need to actually take their breathing by their hands. Like they can't just leave that up to chance and expect to have a robust, thriving life. They just can't. So my bottom line about breathing, Dave, is as we breathe, so we live.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And breathing does, like we've been talking about food and stuff, breathing connects us to our bodies, which I was feeling that a lot when I was camping, because I realized how disconnected from my body I was. In fact, we did a lot of barefoot, and there was these boulders that it was one of our friends, a rock climber. And so we were climbing up on these rocks, and he was teaching us some stuff, and I was laying out on a rock like a lizard. I mean, it was, and I was barefoot, which it was interesting because I was really thinking about what you have been talking about, what I've been learning from you about reconnecting with my body, and reconnecting with my breath and reconnecting with my food. And I didn't realize, because I'm pretty connected overall, but from where I've been in the past. And I think connectedness happens because of increased awareness as well. And because we're asking for it and we're looking for it and we're seeking it. And then we get to ask ourselves, what are we really capable of? I mean, literally, we are capable of we're human beings with a human mind and a body. It's like I had this vision of a whole bunch of fighter jets, like putting in, driving up to Chevron and asking like, hey, what's the cheapest fuel I can get here? And it's like, and then they're like, wait, do you realize you're in a fighter jet? They're like, yeah, don't worry about it. I just want the cheapest, but it's like,
I just want to minimize it.
So let's actually put some nice expensive fuel. But the cool part about breathing is it's free fuel, but it's probably the best. I mean, I don't know about breatharians, but it's just as important, I think, as food or water or the foundational elements of even love. I mean, breath is there.
It's actually, when you think about the science of how does a body survive without a breath, and how does a body go without food, and how does a body go without water, the thing that's the shortest is going without your breath. You can go a long time without food, long time without food.
You're right.
And you can go a ways without water, sometimes shockingly longer than the doctors will say. But you really can't go very long without breath. Now, again, if you're a Wim Hof and you've been training your body and developing your body, you definitely can. And people would say, well, why would you want to do that? It's because we want to explore the vast frontiers of consciousness. Yeah. It's like after a certain level of breathing and brain training and kind of learning that I can be the architect and I can design and manifest my life, after a while it's like, and what else? Like you said, what else is this body capable of?
Yeah.
What other senses? So what happened to me is all these really cool senses turned up or turned on. So my gift of telepathy turned way up.
Wow.
My gift of inner knowing turned way up.
Wow.
My ability to recognize patterns has gone through the roof. My ability to connect with others and actually have silent conversations without words with their bodies That's a new skill. I did not always have that, but in the last 5 years, I've developed that. So it's true. So for me, the body is like this really amazing superhero, and we're inside of it. And it's our job to learn how to, like, we have to get smart enough and develop ourselves and be witty enough at times even, and certainly disciplined and persevering enough, but to unlock all of its secrets, to really open it up and say, okay, what is this? Like you said, a fighter jet, what is this really capable of?
Yeah.
What if it really was capable of walking on water? What if it really was? We know people can walk on those fiery coals, right, and not get burnt. So
right.
I do love this topic.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I think practice is really important, and like anything that is a skill. And so when I was just doing the breathing with you, I've done it with you before. I mean, I still breathe with my shoulders. And it's actually kind of like pretty uncomfortable just to say, okay, shoulders, stay there, and breathe,
right.
Stick the stomach out. You can feel the skill in it when you try to do it right.
Yes.
Because when you try to do it right, I mean, it's like I don't breathe in for that long. I need to.
Well, you have to practice it. I was a backwards breather.
Yeah.
Dr. Dale took me to lunch early in our relationship. That's my former mentor. That those haven't heard that story. And she said, "So let's just take a deep breath before you eat your meal." And I took a breath, and she looked across the table and just went. She goes, "You're a backwards breather." I said, "What's a backwards breather?" Like, oh God! And my mind is like, I can't even breathe properly for her. I can't do anything right. I'm such a klutz, right? She's like, "No, I mean like your anatomy is working against how breath would." And I was like, "You mean I'm anatomically breathing backwards?" She goes, "That's exactly what I mean." So I had to practice, Dave. It was not comfortable. In fact, it was really uncomfortable. But I believed her, and I saw some books from the library about yoga and breathing, so I got some, intellectual satisfaction there, got my little theta wave on, and I said, she's onto it. This is right. But I had to practice. I had to put my hands on my belly when I wasn't working or talking to one of her patients, and I would literally practice pushing on the belly button, making my hands move outwardly, so I could feel myself. So in retrospect, just as I'm saying this to you, what I realized was I was not in my body at all back in those. I was not in my body. Now, that's a former athlete, right?
Wow.
Who can say very clearly at age 25, 26, just still was not in her body. It was truly the conscious breath work that got me in my body.
Wow.
And kept me in my body, and now is showing me as I get more maturity with the techniques and technology, now it's showing me more of my real body. Like, this is how I feel God designed us to be. I think we were designed to be telepathic, clairvoyant, clairaudient. We were designed that way.
Cool.
And this has been a long, slow de-evolution.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to work as hard as we do to get to the goodies. But the truth is, this particular technology of breathing is the fastest. It's the shortest distance between 2 points. If you can do 9 inhales and exhales and get a DMT response,
right.
And you got people paying thousands of dollars to go to the Amazon jungle to drink ayahuasca to get DMT.
So ayahuasca,
God designed
DMT.
That for me. God already gave me that, Dave.
I remember Wim Hof saying, "I get high on my own supply." He's like, I don't
That's
need
what
any
we're
of that
doing.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just harvesting our own. We're making more all the time and harvesting it. And when we do that, so this is what's so cool about it. DMT truly to me is the love drug. It truly makes me more compassionate, more intelligent, more capable of being adaptive in a situation where in the past I might have been like quick to reject something coming at me because it was just, either inappropriate or wrong or toxic or whatever. But I'm not saying I hang out in a toxic situation, but I've been able to learn how to manage my energy better. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe I'm the one hungry and getting a little snippy, and I can kind of go, whoops, I can kind of just shift out of that. So the ability to be in charge of ourselves and do that, not just on behalf of ourselves, but I do that on behalf of humanity. A lot of times people have asked me over the decades, well, what actually keeps you going here, Jess? Because you've been plugging away at this for a very long time. And I'm like, I do this for humanity. That's apparently what I came in to do, and I'm here for that, and I won't be happy unless I'm doing it.
Yeah. It's a golden idea. You're serving yourself and others.
It's the gift that keeps on giving, and
Absolutely.
It's free.
And the more we can unlock our capabilities, our brain power, you're right. There's so much potential inside that is going untapped if we just decide to stay in our normal rhythms. We need a pattern interrupt. And, like we had said before, maybe COVID-19 is a pattern interrupt for the whole world. It's so weird what's really going on, but there's a lot of elevated stress levels. So right now, when, supplements are important too, but the free thing is probably even more foundational than even taking moringa or ashwagandha or turmeric is breathing deep every day. And as a practice, see, it's like, what do you do when you practice something? You learn to do it every single day, because if you don't, it isn't a practice.
That's right. That's right. This, because of how our culture has programmed all of us, we're trained away from wanting to practice things like this. I mean, this is going to sound really crazy, but if you follow me, you'll see the logic. Our ego fears these higher states of consciousness. We don't fear them, but our ego does. And the reason our ego fears them is because they are not familiar. They are different. They are unfamiliar. That's where our ego draws the, it goes, that's enough information, right? I don't even know anything else. It's unfamiliar. I'm against it.
That's a good point. We all ask for superpowers when we're a kid. It takes discipline. It takes real discipline to keep going past that point of stopping, because the ego is going to get us. And I remember in my first couple of years, probably anyway, of doing breath work as the client in the session, feeling the resistance coming up, watching my mind produce all the thousands of reasons why I shouldn't be lying here doing these breathing exercises. But every time I got to the end and I won. Right. Then you just get massive amounts of productivity done. So this is the one thing I actually haven't included into my daily routine yet is a moment of conscious breathing. So I definitely think that I've been, doing working out for my body, been taking supplements, been eating better, been intermittent fasting. And now that I've been doing all of those and building those into habits, I think now is the time when I can add in one more. And I think one of the things that walking does for me is it helps me breathe. And you can do the G breath while you're walking your 10,000 steps if you want.
It'll get you so high. You'll feel so good. Your body will love it. And you'll actually build smarter muscles if you do the G breath while you're walking. You won't be able to do it continuously. You'll have to stop and just do mouth for a while.
And check it out. That's multitasking.
And you're training your body to be smarter in how it's using its muscles. And because you're going through the beta, alpha, theta, delta, you're going to get into some gamma. And then the more you're in gamma when you're being physical. So the people that are really hardcore to brain training, Dave, we all use the G breath when we're doing our physicalities.
Oh, cool.
Like, that's how we know we can be super intelligent with our workout. And the people that do that notice that they can increase their weight sooner. Everything becomes more adaptable with the body. Wow. Not the head trips, but what the body can do. Mm-hmm. And I saw that over and over for myself, and my best friends that were heavily involved with the brain training in South Florida with me saw it as well. So there's something to be said about this state of gamma where everything just becomes smarter. Yeah. Even the body, even the muscles. And my trainer was blown away in South Florida. The first few times I whipped out my G breath on her and said, I'm going to do this thing while I'm doing my reps, and it's just going to be what I do. And then I'll be really high at the end. And she laughed. And then a few times later, she said, you get better each set.
Wow.
How do you do that? And I said, it must be the G breath. I've never thought about it. And then she said, well, I'm going to push you on your weights. And then I got better each set. She goes, I don't know how you do that. I said, it has to be the G breath. So,
wow, it's got to be.
And let me know what you think.
I'm in. I will. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
I'm down for as much. See, it's like I was actually having another thought during my camping trip of like, when we're kids, we're all asking for superpowers. We're like, I want to do that. I want to have that superpowers. And then we actually have been already given them, but then we aren't told that, and so we never learn to develop them. Instead, we go to school and we learn to raise our hand before we speak, and we learn to ask if we can grab the key to go to the bathroom. Right. And we're just not learning. We're learning out of a textbook that gets into a whole nother topic on education. But we need to be learning these things as children. I think it's like
the thing is we had them as children. So when you said we weren't told that we had these superpowers, I would actually one that up. I'd say David got worse. We were told we didn't have those superpowers.
Right. Totally.
No, you can't fly. Yeah. Oh, yes, I can. Yeah. No, you don't have an invisible friend, but they're right here.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I had an invisible friend. My mom encouraged it.
Yeah.
It was great. But yeah, and
So
then
we had a lot of superpowers, and then they started being dumbed down. And again, as the breath became more stunted and became out of the belly and migrated up into the upper chest area, as we started getting indoctrinated with memorizing rote things instead of being creative and working with masterpieces, we're learning how to multiply things over and over.
Right.
So yeah. So kids naturally respond to the G breath. They love it. And I've actually had adult clients of mine give their kid the G breath, and because the kid was doing anxiety and not sleeping, and they said, I'm going to come sit with you and we're going to do it together. They did it together, and this little girl fell in love with it. She was only 6 years old.
Wow.
And the next day she insisted that her mom videotape her doing the G breath for Dr. Jesse to see that, yes, Sarah can do her own G breath.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I
so
love
you can
that.
change things drastically. That's why I like it. It's like it never stops delivering results.
Wow.
And the results could be anything I'm looking for, whether it's me changing a characteristic I have in my personality, or whether it's me developing a written plan for something, or me, forging into a new territory of business. I'm no longer fearful. And the reason I'm not fearful about anything in the future is I know I can just go to my own juice.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy, but it's true. I have my own ability to be in heaven on demand.
And each of the big, even Tony Robbins talks about his morning routine, and his morning routine consists of, it's actually it can get kind of messy, because you got to clear yourself out, but it certainly gives you a big boost of energy when you do that. And he does that in the morning all the time. So it's interesting and fascinating that just everybody does it differently. But you're right. I really haven't heard of it as breathing in order to match your brain waves to get yourself in a gamma state. I mean, that is technology. That's definitely technology.
Yeah.
Wow, how cool.
And it's life-saving technology, and it's free.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the last thing I want to say about this whole thing. One thing that's kind of surprising is to see who latches onto it and who doesn't. And I have best friends that never latched onto it. 20, 30 years later, they're saying, yeah, but you got into this all this long ago. And I'm like, yeah, because it worked for me. So it is a game of discipline. Mm-hmm. And I think the operating question would be something like, how badly do I want some superpowers? How badly do I want more intelligence? How badly do I want to be smarter? How badly do I want to be more adaptable in life? Because life isn't going the way we thought it would. It's going the way it's going.
Wow.
Even better. Yeah.
This is so awesome. So even another thing that gets me back to when you're talking about babies is, what is that class to get rid of pain? It's called Lamaze, right? And that's all breathing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all rapid, shallow mouth breath.
Mouth. So it makes you stronger, more for the physical body.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So breathwork has been around forever, and people have used breathing to manage pain forever. Just like light therapy has been around forever, just like acupuncture meridians have been known about for thousands of years.
Yeah.
These are like the old basic fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
But just because they're fundamental doesn't mean they're not powerful. In fact, this is extremely powerful stuff. So it's going to be really fun to see who latches onto this, who starts doing the G breath. We could even post the directions for the G breath with the video, I think, right? Like the simple sequence down below. Yeah, we should probably do that.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the fundamentals are the thing that makes people better. Like some of those award-winning coaches I know in history, it's about, doing that, like in basketball, doing the free throw 5,000 times in order to be able to sink the shot every time in a game. It's the coaches know that fundamentals are the key to the advanced. You can't get to advanced. Even Bruce Lee, when he would practice a move, he would practice it in super slow motion thousands of times and then begin to speed it up. And once he started speeding it up, it was lightning fast, but it was the actual whole move because he had already practiced it thousands of times, slow.
Yes, exactly. Which is a form of brain training, obviously.
Absolutely. I'm definitely going to be adding in G breath. I'm going to be adding in, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm in a big moment of transition. In fact, for the last couple years, I've been redesigning who I wanted to be, who I am, but actually asking myself the questions on, if I was whatever I wanted to be, who is that person? And when I went to Brendon Burchard, he made me give 3 words, and it was my 3 words were loving, passionate leader. That came to me. And when I was asking myself, okay, well, what does a loving, passionate leader do in the morning? I mean, who is a loving, passionate leader? Like, what is the qualities of this person, and what does it mean? And so I've been redesigning my whole life into that. And I think now I've been feeling just this need for recalibration and defrag, but it's not even just once. This is what I was talking in my book about the cocoon. I actually have a feeling that we actually probably need at least a week, a month, if we can take it, to go somewhere outside of really the radio waves. It's kind of camping, because we're getting into a place where it's going to be so necessary for us to do this as far as protection too, protecting our bodies and protecting ourselves, because we are being bombarded right now. I think it's even going into another degree. And if you want, I would love to do a whole nother episode on 5G, just because that's something that's coming in, and you actually can't get recharged if you're staying around that all the time.
Right. Well, I would like to do a show on EMFs and 5G, because
let's do that.
5G is the next iteration. It's the worst iteration, but it's kind of like saying we can all be freaked out about COVID-19, but how come nobody washed their hands or wore masks with all the flu that we've had for decades and decades? So, people are worried about 5G, but they still have microwaves in their kitchen and they use them.
Right. I know, right? So there's a lot of thoughts about
so we
that.
we could do a great show kind of educating about EMFs in general, and then 5G. Yes, that'd be great. Okay, good. We'll do it.
Let's do it. So this was an excellent episode. I really hope you guys learned a ton from our conversation today, because I'm learning a lot every time I talk to Jessie. So thank you so much for giving us your wisdom and knowledge.
You're welcome, Dave. My pleasure, as always.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Healthy and Family Show. Visit our website at healthyandfamily.com. That's healthyandfamily.com to see what all the other doctors, experts, and real moms have to say about keeping your whole family healthy. This episode has been brought to you by CompleteNutro.com, Whole Family Nutrition, and aired on the Goldstone Network. People, planet, future.
And in the nose. What?